Parthiban Kanavu, English translation by Anand Kannan, narrated by Sujatha Anand. Book 3, Chapter 19. Ponnan's Thoughts. Ponnan encountered the royal entourage as he was walking on the streets of Parantakapuram. He stood out of the way to let the entourage pass. In the torchlight, he saw Kundavi's face. He felt a surge of respect for her. He felt that her kindness was divine, just as her beauty was. How generous does she have to be to help a stranger lying sick and unassisted and carry him in her own palanquin, he thought. He slept at the temple that night. As he lied down, he started planning his next steps. He realized that his prince was in good hands. He could not have provided the care that Kundavi had arranged. She was taking the prince where he had intended to go. It all seems to have been arranged by divine forces. It would have taken a while for the prince to get well. There was no chance of meeting him while he was recovering. There would be no point in hovering around him as he recovers. The time would be better spent in looking for Queen Arulmozhi. The shy-white sage had asked him to come to a spot to meet him whenever he had new information on the queen's whereabouts. He had provided directions to the sculptor's house in the forest on the way to Mamalapuram. It might be best to go there next to get his advice. The next morning, Ponnan saw the royal entourage set off towards Orayur. As he saw them leave, he prayed for the prince to be entirely cured by the time he returned from Mamalapuram. He started walking in the opposite direction. As his feet took him to Mamalapuram, his thoughts flew to Orayur along with his prince. He realized that there was a significant element of risk in the prince being under Kundavi's care. He thought, what would happen if Princess Kundavi discovers who the gem trader is? The sick prince can reveal his own identity in delirium. Or he could be so surprised on finding himself in his childhood home that he might give himself away. Once the princess knows his identity, the information might get to the Prince Mahendran and through him to the emperor. Ponnan was aware that the violation of terms of deportation was punishable by death. By God's grace, it won't come to that, he reassured himself. If the princess learns his identity, she will make an effort to save him. There is talk that she argued his case after hearing the verdict to deport him. Did the sage not tell Queen Arulmozhi how eloquently the princess pleaded with the emperor to pardon my prince? Thinking of the sage and the Princess Kundavi together took his thoughts to the conversation he had overheard in the traveller's pavilion. Princess Kundavi had ordered Marappan to capture the sage. This thought filled him with an unnamed fear. Who is the sage really? Is he the noble soul that he appears to be? Or a pretender? Is he really a friend of the Chola dynasty? Is it a good idea to tell him about the prince's return and whereabouts? I wish I had a chance to discuss the sage with Prince Vikraman, he thought. Ponnan made another connection that surprised him. Didn't the prince say that he stayed with the spy chief in a sculptor's house? The sage has asked me to meet him at a sculptor's house. From the directions, it seems to be the same house. What is the connection between the spy chief and the sage? He had a firm belief that the sage was a noble man. He would be in the sage's debt forever for saving him from Marappan. The queen also seemed to implicitly trust the sage. Despite all this, there were reasons to think that he was not a genuine sage. Valli had voiced a theory as to who the sage really was. Valli had theorized that King Parthiban did not really die in battle. He did not want it to be known that he was the sole survivor from his army. Hence, he took on the guise of the sage. Much as Ponnan admired Valli's intellect, he did not buy into this theory. There was another episode that contributed to his misgivings. He had been depressed after Queen Arulmozhi left on her pilgrimage. He went to the Ayyanar temple in the forest to pray for peace of mind. He found that one of the mud forms of elephants was broken. he found a bag within the farm. When he had opened the bag, he had found things like tiger skin clothing, prayer beads, and a wig. He had concluded that those items must have been the costumes used for the guise of the sage. So who was that impostor? What could his motives be? What did Kapala Bhairavan whisper to Marappan about the impostor's identity? What had the sage done to incur the wrath of Princess Kundavi, who was otherwise generous to a fault? Ponnan had no answer to these questions, but he resolved to ask the sage about his identity when they met. He would not reveal what he knew about Vikraman and Queen Arulmoyi's captors unless he received a satisfactory answer. If there was no satisfactory answer, he would wait to consult Vikraman before confiding in the sage. Ponnan's mind was a whirl of thoughts and emotions as he walked. When he was offered cart rides for parts of his journey, he took them. He reached the shortcut to Mamalapuram that cut through the forest. He had received clear directions from the sage. He was looking for the landmarks as he walked. He saw a rider coming from the opposite direction. The horse and the rider turned into the forest. It was not clear to Ponnan if the rider noticed him. He speculated from Vikraman's description that it might be the spy chief. The spot where the horse turned also met the description that sage had given Ponnan. He turned at the same spot. He followed the sounds of the horse going through the dense growth. He walked for about an hour and a half. He could see an opening. He also saw a beautifully architected house. Ponnan saw the horse in front of the house. As Ponnan reached the house, the sage appeared at the entrance, smiling at Ponnan. Ponnan looked up at him with surprise. End of chapter 19.